This is my ranking of MMOs that I've played, based purely on my personal experience. Each game is placed from masterpiece down to trash, depending on how engaging the world feels, how rewarding the progression is, and how well they keep me coming back over time. Let's get straight into the list. Guild Wars 2 starts off feeling like a normal MMO, but that changes quickly as I move through the world and keep running into dynamic events that bring large groups of players together without any setup. I can just show up, join in, and still get rewards, which makes everything feel shared instead of isolated. The world keeps pushing me to explore, with new surprises appearing often, and even small things like gathering or reaching hidden spots feel worth doing. Combat has more movement and timing than I expected, especially in tougher areas where paying attention matters. Some events do lose their impact after repeating them many times, but the constant activity and strong sense of community keep the experience engaging. This clearly belongs in the masterpiece tier. BitCraft Online feels like a slow and quiet MMO where I spend most of my time gathering, crafting, and figuring things out step by step in a massive shared world. The freedom to choose what I want to do is nice, since there's no fixed path, and I can focus on building, farming, or trading at my own pace. Early on, I get overwhelmed by too many systems and tasks, but once that settles, the game finds a steady rhythm that makes progression satisfying. Every item takes effort, and even small progress feels earned. At the same time, the controls feel awkward, the interface gets cluttered, and finding things can turn frustrating. Knowing that progress will reset also makes it harder to stay invested for long. This lands in the good tier. Once Human begins in a strange survival world where everything feels familiar at first, but quickly shifts into something unusual with its bizarre creature designs and alien-infested setting. Fighting enemies that look like twisted objects or unnatural monsters keeps things interesting, even though the combat itself stays pretty simple most of the time. The crafting and building systems are easy to understand, which makes progression feel smooth. And I like how I can slowly build and improve my base without too much friction. Exploring the map feels rewarding since it's large and packed with activities, even if the visuals can feel dull in some areas. Some missions start to feel repetitive, and the difficulty spikes later on can be frustrating. Seasonal resets also affect long-term investment, but it still holds attention. This finds its place in the good tier. Wizard 101 feels like a light and colorful MMO where I step into the role of a young wizard and move through different worlds while following a simple but clear story. The turn-based combat using cards gives it a different pace compared to most MMOs, and it's easy to understand without feeling overwhelming. I like how joining fights is seamless, with other players able to jump in at any time without disrupting anything, which keeps things relaxed. The game is very accessible, with systems designed to avoid frustration, especially with its chat filters and casual-friendly design. At the same time, combat can start to feel repetitive, and the spell variety doesn't evolve as much as I hoped. Still, the charm, simplicity, and easygoing structure keep it engaging for a long time. This earns a spot in the great tier. Albion Online gives me a true sandbox MMO where I can decide exactly what role I want to play, whether that's gathering resources, crafting gear, or focusing on combat. The freedom stands out right away, especially with the "you are what you wear" system, where my build depends on my equipment instead of fixed classes. Progression through the Destiny board feels deep, though it can be confusing at first and takes time to understand properly. I like how the player-driven economy and guild systems make everything feel connected, since almost everything is crafted and traded by players. At the same time, the grind can get heavy, and solo play starts to feel limited later on. Performance issues and lack of guidance can also hold it back at times, but the core design stays strong. This clearly fits into the excellent tier. Final Fantasy XIV presents itself as a full RPG experience within an MMO, with a strong focus on story that keeps me moving from one area to another while learning about the world and its characters. The main questline is long and detailed, giving a clear sense of direction instead of sending me through random tasks. I can play most of it solo, which makes progression smooth, but group content like dungeons and raids still fits in naturally when needed. The world is large and varied, with regions that look and feel different, and there's always something to do beyond combat, including crafting and side activities. Some older visuals show their age, but the depth and structure carry the experience all the way through. This easily stands in the masterpiece tier. The Quinfall begins with a surprisingly strong character creation system that gives me a lot of freedom to shape my character, and that first impression actually sets some expectations. But once I move into the game itself, things start to fall apart pretty quickly. The early quests feel repetitive and lack any real engagement, with constant back-and-forth tasks that don't add much value. Combat doesn't help either, as it feels loose and unresponsive, making fights less satisfying than they should be. The world is large, but it starts to feel repetitive fast, with reused assets and very little variety in enemies or environments. Even basic systems like the interface and progression feel unfinished or unclear. It comes across as an ambitious project that isn't ready yet. This clearly falls into the trash tier. Fallout 76 takes the familiar open-world formula and places it into a shared online setting, which sounds interesting at first, especially when exploring a large map filled with environmental details and small stories hidden across different regions. I do enjoy wandering through the world and discovering these little moments, since they add some life to an otherwise quiet environment. But the lack of meaningful NPC interaction makes the world feel empty, and many quests turn into following notes or recordings instead of real conversations. Playing with others can make things better, adding some fun during fights and exploration, but the core loop of gathering, crafting, and managing inventory starts to feel repetitive over time. Technical issues and clunky systems also get in the way quite often. This ends up sitting in the mediocre tier. Black Desert Online gives me a very detailed sandbox world where I can spend time doing much more than just fighting, from gathering resources to trading, farming, and even taming horses. The level of detail in the world stands out, and moving through it feels natural since there's no fast travel pushing me to actually experience the journey. Combat is fast and action-based, which makes grinding more engaging than usual, even though it still becomes repetitive over time. I like how flexible the progression is, especially with gear and builds shaping my role instead of strict classes. At the same time, many systems are not explained well, and I often have to figure things out on my own. The grind can also get heavy, especially later on, but the depth and freedom keep it interesting. This clearly fits into the excellent tier. DC Universe Online lets me step into a superhero world where I create my own character and fight alongside familiar DC figures, which is a strong idea right from the start. The combat is action-based and easy to pick up, with combos that feel responsive and satisfying during fights. I like how missions are fully voiced and sometimes feature well-known characters, which adds some personality to the experience. Exploring cities like Gotham and Metropolis is also a highlight, since they feel detailed and distinct. But the quest design doesn't change much, often repeating the same objectives again and again, and some systems are not explained clearly. Bugs and technical issues can also get in the way at times. Even with those problems, it stays fun in short bursts. This lands in the good tier. Ravendawn brings a retro-style MMO experience where I explore a pixel art world while building my character through a flexible class system that allows a lot of experimentation. I like how I can mix different playstyles and adjust my build over time instead of being locked into one role. The sandbox design gives me freedom to gather, craft, trade, or just explore, and the player-driven economy makes everything feel connected. The world has a nostalgic look that runs smoothly, but during combat, it can sometimes be hard to read what's happening on screen. While there are many systems working together, the core gameplay still needs some refinement, and it doesn't always feel polished. Still, the foundation is strong, and the ongoing updates show potential for growth. This finds its place in the good tier. Elder Scrolls Online gives me a large world to explore, where I follow long quest lines that feel closer to a traditional RPG than a typical MMO. The story takes time to build, but it stays engaging, and I like how many quests are fully voiced and offer small choices that affect outcomes. Combat feels more active than most MMOs, with blocking, timing, and positioning making a real difference during fights. The world encourages exploration with hidden locations, lore, and rewards scattered across different regions. Playing with others helps during tougher encounters, especially in dungeons and large-scale PvP. At the same time, the game has its rough edges, including bugs, uneven visuals, and some multiplayer systems that don't always work smoothly. Even with those issues, the depth and variety keep me invested. This clearly sits in the excellent tier. Myth of Empires gives me a large sandbox world where I focus on gathering resources, building structures, and slowly developing my own base or even a full settlement over time. I like how much freedom it offers, especially with crafting systems that feel deep and rewarding once I start to understand them. Building, farming, and managing resources all connect well, and working with others can make the experience much smoother. The world itself looks great, with detailed environments and a strong atmosphere, especially during different times of day. But getting into the systems can feel overwhelming at first, and the amount of grinding required is quite high. Combat also feels a bit slow early on, and some interface elements could be clearer. Even with those issues, the progression loop keeps me engaged. This settles into the good tier. Throne and Liberty stands out with its visual quality, and as I move through the world, the environments and large-scale set pieces keep catching my attention. The combat is one of the stronger parts, with a mix of auto attacks, skills, and timed defenses that make fights feel active without being too complex. I like the weapon-based system since it lets me switch playstyles instead of locking into a class, and the morph mechanic adds a fun way to move around the world. At the same time, the story feels generic and doesn't hold much weight, and the constant flow of quests can get messy to track. Large-scale multiplayer content can also feel chaotic, especially with performance issues. Even so, the core gameplay and presentation keep it engaging enough. This finds its place in the great tier. Star Wars: The Old Republic places me in a story-driven MMO where my choices actually shape how my character behaves, with light and dark decisions adding personality to every interaction. The dialogue system stands out, with fully voiced conversations that make even simple quests feel more meaningful. I like how each class has its own storyline, which keeps progression interesting instead of feeling repetitive too quickly. Combat follows a more traditional MMO style, and while it works fine, it doesn't bring anything very new. The companion system adds another layer, letting me travel with characters who react to my choices and grow over time. There is a lot of content to go through, and it rarely feels empty. Some bugs and repetitive quest design still show up, but the strong storytelling carries it forward. This belongs in the excellent tier. Old School RuneScape gives me a classic MMO experience where I set my own goals and slowly build progress across a huge number of skills, quests, and activities. There's no strict path, so I can focus on whatever I want, whether that's leveling skills, completing quests, or just exploring the world at my own pace. The progression feels slow but very rewarding, since every small upgrade takes effort and time. I like how the community plays a big role, especially with updates being decided through player voting, which keeps the game shaped by its players. The amount of content is massive, and it feels like there's always something to work toward. Even though the grind can be heavy and the visuals are simple, the depth keeps me invested for a long time. This easily claims a spot in the masterpiece tier. Lost Ark gives me a fast-paced MMO experience with combat that feels closer to an action RPG, where I'm constantly using abilities, dodging attacks, and clearing large groups of enemies in a satisfying way. The class variety stands out, with each playstyle feeling distinct, and I like how I can adjust skills to match how I want to play. The world opens up more once I unlock sailing, letting me explore different regions and activities beyond the main path. At the same time, the story feels generic and doesn't leave much impact, and early progression can feel a bit too guided. Later on, the grind becomes more noticeable, especially when trying to reach higher-level content. Even with those issues, the combat and variety keep things engaging for a long time. This earns its place in the great tier. That's my MMO ranking based on how each one kept me invested over time. If you've played any of these, I'd like to hear your ranking or what MMO I should check out next. Thanks for watching.